are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me, as always, Mr. Kevin Durso. Kevin, been a minute. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. We're back here. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, hey, make sure to subscribe over there, by the way. You'll notice that I am in a new studio here. We're in the process of getting it all set up, but so we have some Flyers news to get to. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, you'll notice that I am also wearing an interesting jersey. We'll talk about that a little later too. One of our bigger stories on the day. And then I did just want to let people know off the top here that next week is going to be a playoff preview, so make sure you're back here for that. Games are going to start on Monday. That episode should be out on Sunday at some point. So make sure to come back, check out the YouTube channel, subscribe over there. All right, let's get into it.
Sure.
The big story, and of course it happens the day after our last show, as is tradition here on the podcast, is actually a story that has nothing to do with the on-ice product. I know we've been talking kind of about the off-ice stuff for most of the season, and that reigns true here too. With the announcement that Dave Scott, at the end of the season, will be done. He will be retiring. Dan Hilferty will take over as the president of the team is the role, correct?
No, governor of the team.
Governor of the team, I'm sorry.
Right. So basically, look, this is a big deal, this story, obviously, because it's a big deal because it's right at the top. This is
the name.
Well, sure. And I think that the key here is that maybe more so than when Dave Scott took over, you now have a new face to put to ownership and can actually identify it from day one. Like, I don't know if when everything was going on, I certainly don't recall it this way, that people like went out of their way to know who Dave Scott was. I think now I think everybody was if it wasn't going to be Dave.
People became familiar with Dave Scott's name, especially in the last 18 months or so.
Well, I think that was also that's somewhat self-inflicted though, because when you put yourself out there in the way that he did in that January press conference, then all of a sudden everybody it very much becomes okay, who the hell are you? Maybe I should find out more about you. You know what I mean? I don't recall when he took over though, for the first several years too, that there was really this much interest in who was really overseeing the whole thing. And now obviously there is. Hopefully Dan Hilferty is more involved in that sense by being a face and being somebody that you can identify with ownership. I don't think anybody out there, even among Flyers fans, for as much vitriol as there can be around the fan base for everything that go on, I don't think anyone's asking for an owner like Ed Snyder or ownership to be somebody with this really big reputation. In the same vein. We're not looking
for Jerry Jones or Al Davis or.
Okay, in the same range. Yeah, I had Jerry Jones too written down, but I also like a Jerry Jones, a Mark Cuban, even the whole concept of the possibility that Ryan Reynolds is part of this ownership group that would want to buy Ottawa. Like, it puts somebody out there and there's a reputation behind that person that follows them, and it may have nothing to do with the team itself. Like, there's another reason why they're popular for whatever reason, right? Like,
or even in hockey, a situation like the Wirtz family, where you have a family that is not afraid to be in the public eye for good or for bad.
Well, sure. And that's the thing. I just don't think that's necessary to be that kind of level reputation kind of guy. You know what I mean? Like, you just want to have somebody who has a pulse on the organization and can recognize what everyone else is seeing. Like, that was the big thing with Dave Scott. It really wasn't whether or not, it comes down to this, that he didn't know enough about the game, because the idea was if you knew enough about the game, you would see what everybody else sees. You would make a change. That's what it came down to. You just want somebody who recognizes what's good is good, what's bad is bad, weed out the bad, stick with the good, find a way to make
stuff,
work.
Less of the bad stuff.
Right. And good in very, very different ways too. Like, it doesn't have to just be figure out who's a good player, who's not, who's a good GM and who's not. That's not even the totality of what you need to be able to do. You also need to be able to resonate with the fan base from a business. And look, I don't want to put it all on the change here with Hilferty, because that's part of what Val Camillo does. That's part of the business side of running the team. And I think that there have probably been things that have been done that venture towards making that part of it better, maybe making game experience a little bit better. It's hard to see when the team is the way that it is and the interest level is low. But I think that there are things that happen that you're trying to get there. Sure. It's now the part is, get the right team in place to build the team that wins and brings people in, because that's what everybody really wants. And that's what presents the next step of the whole equation, which is you can make changes like we've seen over the last 6 weeks. You can change the general manager and you can change the CEO of Comcast-Spectacor. At the end of the day, on the surface, today, it is just another ex-Flyer in a management position and another suit on the business side. Yep. Danny Briere and Dan Hilferty are certainly two newer figures to the process, and maybe that helps it take a step forward. You still have to weed out the bad, right? Or at least the things that maybe aren't working. So you have to weed out the old school mindset and truly stick to the process of building this team from the ground up that takes years of drafting, years of development, several instances of getting it right, finding that diamond in the rough. There's a ton of work to do. And a lot of it's going to have to be done just this offseason, just to keep the team on the right track in terms of getting the right people in place to do that process. That's where a lot of the work happens now. You need to get the right people in place to keep everything moving. And then we're going to be talking about players for the next 3, 4, 5 years about who really factors in on the ice. But the biggest work that needs to be done is right now, because whoever you hire, you got to assume is not going to be done in 3 years. You have to hope that's the case, right? Like when you're hiring president of hockey ops or making sure or saying Danny Briere is full-time GM, which it very much looks like is going to be the case.
Right.
Then you better make sure you're right about this for the next 3, 4, 5 years also. And that has to happen today. It can't happen next year or the year after and be like, well, wait, we made another mistake. Let's try to backtrack and do it again. Like, you're going to be too far behind the process. So that's the big deal with this story is that, listen, at the very least, you got what you wanted to see at the very top of the whole thing. Now somebody else, and I believe that I had brought this up the last time when we kind of talked about when Chuck Fletcher got fired, really, which is, okay, now that change has been made, and all the stuff that Danny said about, I got to talk to Dave and Dan about what the involvement is of the advisors and all that stuff. Well, then that meant we knew Dan Hilferty was going to have his fingerprints on something moving forward.
Yep. And
now obviously he's going to, because this has happened. The retirement thing has happened for Dave Scott. Hilferty's going to take over. Let's see how much of, he is a self-described tenacious Flyers fan. Let's see how much of one he is by getting this role.
And, obviously Dan Hilferty is an accomplished individual. You don't reach the levels he has reached without individual accomplishment. And he's done all the things right.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a voracious fan. And he's now in the driver's seat. And it's not the same as playing NHL on the PlayStation. But he's doing about as close to the real-life version as it can possibly be. He's not looking at it as a business asset. Well, I mean, he is. I'm sure there is a business aspect to it. Don't get it wrong. But I think the one thing that this city will love and will appreciate and that will resonate with this city is the fact that he wants the team to win. He wants a parade down Broad Street. Yep.
Well, that's exactly it, though. Is he another suit? Does he want to help it be profitable? Of course he does. But here's the thing. He also seems like he knows, as a self-described tenacious Flyers fan, what's good business. Winning is going to be good business for you.
Flyers fans fill seats, buy merch, and will pay $1 billion for tickets and beer.
The real answer is, you know what winning business is? Playoff games, because it's all profit.
Because you're done paying the players,
right? It's all profit. So if you make the playoffs again,
and you charge that good money for playoffs.
Well, and think about it. You
haven't made money on playoff tickets in a long time.
Well, because every year they've played in the playoffs. Recently, they've played 3 games at home, 3 games at home because both are 6
games in the bubble.
Well, but that's the point. Like the only other time you can think of since 2012. Where they played more than just the 3 home games they would get from a first-round series. They were in a bubble where you got, they would have had 3 home games in that 6-game series against Montreal, and then a 7-game series where they were the designated home team.
Yep.
Where it would have been 4 more. Like, that was profitable.
A lot. Yep,
that's a lot of money for you when it comes down to it, right? Like, that's what you should be striving for from a business standpoint. But that's the point. Good business is having something worth investing in from a fan perspective. And if you are a self-described tenacious fan, you should know that. You should know what's worth your time and money as a fan. And I understand he's not going to be the average tenacious fan because he's got a ton of money. So,
And
money sometimes is not an object for people like that. But, nonetheless.
And this is a pretty quick insertion. He took over his role with Comcast, 8 weeks ago?
Pretty much. I mean, it was you know what? It was Valentine's Day
and
that release came out.
So less than that. So we're talking
it's
5,
been about
6 weeks ago.
We're literally talking as we speak, just about 2 months.
So Dan is not stepping down in terms of stepping down towards the hockey side of things in the corporate hierarchy. He's stepping down one step closer to the Flyers. Because he knows that that's where his attention... I mean, not where his attention needs to be. I'm sure Comcast has other things for him to do as well. Mm-hmm. But that's where his personal interest focus is going to be. He inserted himself into this position because he wants to have a more direct impact on the franchise. And that is the move of someone who knows the kind of changes that need to be made.
And there's two really important things. One more from the very beginning of when he got actually hired, and one more recent that kind of come into play, because one goes exactly to what you're saying, that it's not going to be the only thing he's focused on. Because, and listen, there's two sides to this particular discussion, so I don't expect it to go anywhere per se, but he, at least Hilferty, was quoted recently about the whole idea of Wells Fargo Center and the relationship they have with the Sixers, because the Sixers don't own anything. They literally are a tenant.
Yep.
And Hilferty made it expressed, we might be open to selling them part of the building if that's what they want. If they want to be part of, have ownership of ownership of the building or part of it, like Comcast is still going to be all Flyers all the time. But the property itself, it's listen, we'll listen on that if that's what it is, because they want to have the ability to utilize the arena the way that they or whatever the case may be. It's we'll listen. Now, the Sixers don't sound very interested in that with this big proposal they've got for an arena in downtown Center City, all that kind of stuff. And look, whatever, that's, they've got the right to do that as well, because it's a different ownership group. It's,
It'll be so interesting to see if that happens, but that's
sure. But at least it tells me,
podcast.
Well, no, but at least it tells you Hilferty's involvement from a Comcast-Spectacor standpoint, which owns the Flyers, owns Wells Fargo Center, is kind of still tied into, well, hey, listen, there's this other resident of the building that is threatening to leave because they're basically renting it.
The Wings.
So, well, no, the Wings are owned by them too.
I'm joking. Okay, are they actually? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But the idea is, okay, the NBA team is threatening to leave. We could try to do something about that. Maybe we'll listen and do that. So he's got a business standpoint on that too, where it's hey, listen, they're threatening to leave.
Make it attractive.
I'll negotiate. We'll make it work. Sure. Yeah. And so clearly it means he's not all business with the Flyers, to be talking about that type of stuff. But the thing that I want to go back to that was from the very beginning was how, this hiring kind of goes under the radar in February. It doesn't sound like it's much of anything. People were even told, don't read into it because he's only working from the upper parts of Comcast in general, not going to have involvement with the team. Funny how that changes when a general manager. Well, right. Funny how it changes when a general manager is out and you need to make wholesale changes to the organization because they're standing outside Wells Fargo Center with.
Where's his shore house again? Avalon.
No, he grew up. What for Hilferty? He grew up in Ocean City. Or he grew up in Ocean City. He lives in where you're thinking of. You said Avalon because he lives in Ardmore.
He lives in Ardmore. Okay. So it takes about 25 minutes to get from Ardmore to the Wells Fargo Center. Hello. Come on. Hello, McFly. And listen, I love it. For the record, I love it because, quite frankly, I'm jealous. I want to be. I'll be honest with you. I haven't really looked up and seen a picture of Dan Hilferty. I'm dressing as Dan Hilferty for Halloween for the rest of all time because he's living my dream. Come on. Somebody hands you the keys. Capital T, capital K, the keys to the Philadelphia Flyers. Here you go.
Right.
Come on.
But either way, I've always found that part fascinating. That don't read into it. He's not going to have direct involvement with the Flyers. 6 weeks later, he's the new he's gonna be the new governor of the Flyers by June. Like he's
going to be the new president of hockey ops by the draft.
No, he won't be the new president. Of
I know.
But I do want to make that clarification, by the way, that so quite literally we're doing the show a little different this week because Easter Sunday game and nighttime and all that stuff. It was a little bit messed up, schedule wise. So we're doing it on a Monday night instead.
Happy
week
Easter.
From the time. Happy Easter to everybody out there who celebrates.
Yeah.
Yes. Quite literally a week from today, from when we're talking, Dan Hilferty is the CEO of Comcast-Spectacor.
Yep.
He does not take over as the governor of the Flyers until I believe it's the new league year.
Okay.
So so it's once everything really kicks in. It's post Stanley Cup. It's all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it's right around it's right as sort of right around I think July 1st is when that happens or something like that. Or it's either June or July 1st. I'd have to go back and double check to make sure.
Well,
but
it's going to have to be after June 1st because the Stanley Cup usually runs into June.
Well, if that was the case, I don't know exactly. Like what I'm saying is that there was a caveat into it. They put a date on it.
When this year ends and it kicks over into next year, right?
Either way, it's not going to matter. He's involved in the process moving forward of finding your next most important
He can do whatever
position.
he wants right now. He has the position as much as he wants to have the position right now.
Oh, exactly. But either way, so that pretty much puts a bow on the off-ice stuff because, this is the big change that's going to happen. We have nothing else really. Like I said, Danny Briere is probably, I wouldn't be shocked if by the time we're recording next week, which will be,
he has
we'll
a
be back
contract
doing this
and an official title.
That he has an official, that the title is official. I'll call it that.
That they remove the interim tag.
Because right now they're really just trying to get through the exit interview portion, like get through the last couple games, do the exit interviews, all that type of stuff. Like you know what? I'll tell you exactly when I think it really could happen. It's probably the Monday news drop next week.
Okay.
Like it feels like do the weekend, do the whole thing. All right, the players part, like the player portion's done. We won't hear from any the players until we have to again. Danny Briere's the GM. It really feels like they're going to make that decision quick.
Monday, Monday, April 10th, I'm going to ask you, Eric Lindros versus the field for the president of hockey ops job.
I haven't really heard much of Lindros stuff lately, to be honest. Like, I don't know. Look, I don't know whether he was talked to about it or not. I don't really think, whatever it was, I don't think much of it just because I haven't heard his name floating around there as much. It sounds like Ray Shero's name is really out there. I've heard a lot about it. Now, I did see an interesting caveat, which I believe Anthony DeMarco had this. Fourth period, by the way, just in case anybody doesn't know where to find his stuff. Although he's been killing it lately, so people really should by this point. The idea is that the concept is that people are not sure if Shero's going to go into that president role or if he wants a GM job again, because let's not forget, the New Jersey Devils are making the playoffs this year. Could still win the Metro.
On his resume, basically.
Right, and his fingerprints are all over that.
Yep.
So he may try to use that to get himself a full-time GM job versus, president of hockey ops.
Kind of retire upstairs into a hockey ops.
Well, which again, it's like, again, you're the direct line of communication between general manager, in between ownership, you're overseeing a lot of the other departments, things like that. I don't know. Like, I'm just saying that his name's been out there a lot. I've seen Dave Poulin's name come up. And Poulin, for the record, now again, I know everybody immediately jumps to ex-Flyer captain. Oh boy,
right.
But in terms of management, by the way, Poulin's worked for the Toronto Maple Leafs under Brian Burke, no less. So, there's a history there that maybe, and he's still a broadcaster. He still works for TSN. So I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know if he's I wouldn't say he's like at the top of the list or anything like that. I really think that they're leaning, like there's a lot that makes sense about Shero because of the fact that he's done stuff like this before. He's kind of built teams from the ground up a couple times here.
The aforementioned New Jersey Devils.
No, he's done it with Pittsburgh too.
Yep.
Like, you can't deny that. So
that dude loves rebuilding Metro teams.
Yeah, I hear you. And then look, is it only natural that they're because he does that? within his family, there's a Flyer connection
Yep.
in both ways, by the way, because obviously his father has a great place in Flyers history, but
Yep.
his son is also already working for the team.
Right.
So it's like you kind of have a couple of avenues here where it's like, does it make sense? Sure, it does. But but there is still that idea, and again, he teeters on that age group where it's like, do you get more young, like you get younger and more progressive, or do you kind of go somewhat old school way, but a guy who's at least done it in this century?
Right. He doesn't have to be an analytics guy, but in certain situations, he's got to be willing to listen to,
Right. You need to
the
know where you're
numbers
going with that.
guys.
Sure, exactly. And that's really what it is. So we'll see where it goes. I mean, I don't want to try to give too much insight onto things that I don't really completely know where they're going.
Fair.
We know that there's a lot of work to be done. Right now it feels more and more like get to the end of the season and then we'll really start to hear a lot more. I mean, here's the other part of the problem too, and this kind of feeds into something that Elliot Friedman said way back when at the very beginning of all this like process and stuff. There's going to be a lot of names out there, and there have been. Like, it's almost like you could sit there and say if you're in the hockey business in any way, you may have been linked to the job already.
Because they might have called you about it.
Well, no, which kind of to an extent turns all of this speculation into throw something against the wall. Eventually it'll stick,
That is fair.
Like, that's the truth of the matter. So I don't want to get too into the possibilities. I just know that Shero's name has been out there for a while, like from almost the very beginning, and that hasn't died down, which at least makes me believe it's more credible than like the idea of, I'm trying to think of somebody who we heard for an instant and then like not anymore. Like, I don't really think I've heard, like Friedman mentioned Ed Olczyk. And I think Ed Olczyk has wanted to do something with the Flyers for a while, truthfully. Like, I think that there have been opportunities there potentially in the past.
There's been enough smoke surrounding him.
But I don't know that
I believe that there's been some fire at some point.
Well, at some point, but I don't know in this instance if it's gone any further
For
than
sure.
the first mention. You know what I mean? Like even Chris Pronger, I don't have anything further beyond that initial mention, to go, oh, that's a possibility. It's the same thing with the Lindros thing.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything further that suggests, oh, he's definitely in this thing. But Shero's name keeps coming up, and you start to think about that. I've seen a couple, like Poulin's name has come up quite a bit. I've seen, and again, it's fun. Like I remember what I told you recently too, because I even said you're gonna hear player like. The former player thing is just a real thing that happens a lot of places. It's kind of hard to avoid because players play in a lot of different places and they have a history. So, for example, Scott Mellenby's name came up. Now, Scott Mellenby has been an assistant GM for various teams at this point, right? Like, it's not like he's all connected to the Flyers all the time, even though he played here in the 80s.
Right. So, he was a name that he's been around.
Like, as a matter of fact, we all really know the real backstory with Mellenby at this stage of his career, which was the intention or the idea was he was supposed to be the de facto GM in Montreal after everything fell apart with Bergevin.
Yep.
And they didn't give it to him, so he left.
Hey, so speaking of former players and Montreal, real quick, did you see Martin St. Louis, the little shootout move he pulled in practice the other day?
I did see something about that.
Oh my goodness. He does a little half, fake turn, back skates across the crease and just absolutely dummies the goalie. Like it's unfair. He's in his 50s and just looks incredible.
He's still got those Hall of Fame hands, so
and oh yeah.
Like, come on.
All right. I was going to say, anything else we have to say about the Flyers?
Not the front office stuff. Let's get to the
stuff here. Yeah,
let's get to the other stuff.
Because we do have an on the ice story to talk about, I guess.
We have a couple at this point. Like, we have a couple to get into. So, number one, they're on a 7-game losing streak.
Have they lost every game since our last show?
Let me check and see
I'm pulling it up, but I believe it is.
No, not quite. They won against Montreal after we did our last show, and then they start. Well, and here's the thing. They had every reason to lose against Ottawa. That game was getting out of hand, and they rallied back and got it to overtime, which, just one of those it's one of those types of competitive games, right? Like, that we've seen from them. And then kind of since then, there's been this downward trajectory of the quality within the games.
The end of the season is starting to set in, and combine that with the fact that the playoff teams are really kind of starting to crank it up and get into gear and really get the machine oiled. We're seeing a lot more blowout games in the NHL these days. A lot more 7-1s and 8-0s, and and the Flyers are on the poor end of that, as as one of the bottom teams.
Well, and that's one of the things, because we're going to get into the last game that they played on Sunday night, and for a game that, based on the way that everything was going, I fully expected to not be competitive. I'll give them credit; they did compete in that game.
Yeah, but they didn't compete with the Boston Bruins.
Well, no, I'm saying they
competed. No, they competed with the Providence Bruins.
Well, because they had a bunch of other players.
Because they were missing Bergeron, McAvoy.
Bergeron, McAvoy, Krejci. Yeah, but Krejci's been out for a little while, so that's not
sure.
I get it.
But you know what I'm saying. They weren't exactly playing the. I mean, do we want to
saw what happened when? Well, we're not going to get because I want to make sure that we get off of the 7-game thing and just be done. Because the other part of the equation here is that during that time they were officially eliminated from the playoffs, which was inevitable.
We all knew
nonetheless,
right.
But that's all I'm like. I understand where you're coming from with what kind of team Boston puts out there at the end there. But for me, just looking at the last handful of games leading up to, for the same group of players, by the way. They rolled out pretty much the same team every night
for the most part. Yeah.
Right. I'm just looking at the way in St. Louis, in Dallas, against the Islanders, this just looked like a team that's ready for it all to be over. Like, it was pretty poor quality games. They were not competitive. I believe that, it eventually ended up happening against the Islanders too, but from the Ottawa game to the Islander game, because the Boston game is the only game on the 7-game losing streak that this has not happened, ironically. And that's why I say I give them credit for playing a competitive game that night. And actually, it wasn't like the others. Against Ottawa, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Dallas, and the Islanders in those 6 games, they fell behind by at least 3 goals every single time. Which, to me, tells you that's a team ready for it all to be over.
Ready to go play some golf.
The season can't end soon enough.
So, a question for you, just as one of the things that kind of popped up towards the back half of this 7-game losing streak.
Okay.
What's the story with 77? Where does he go from here? He's been
somewhere else eventually.
Well, I mean, that's the idea, right? But I mean, he's been healthy scratched, and he's making too much money to be healthy scratched.
It's not that he's making. I understand what you're saying. He's making money to be, but no. But here's how this happens. At the end of the day, when the head coach is telling you I haven't talked to him about it, it probably means there wasn't much of a conversation to be had.
Probably your head coach saying I haven't talked to him.
Well, no, probably the player, went to near the next in line. Probably so. Let's say Bradshaw, the assistant who runs the defenseman. Let's just say that is the example. And probably decides that or says something that obviously gets back to Torts, and then Tortorella makes up his own mind and goes, fine, I'm not playing him then. Done.
Absolutely.
Like that's how these things work if you have a rift. And I don't, I'll say this for Tortorella. He didn't deny that part of it. Like, he just said, I haven't spoken to him. Okay, fine. But at least he didn't deny that there's potentially something here.
There's definitely tension.
Well, but you can say that for a bunch of players at this point.
Fair enough.
Obviously at this point, the way that Kevin Hayes has looked over the last several weeks, he is definitely one of those players probably looking for a ticket out of here.
He looks thoroughly disinterested in being a Philadelphia Flyer.
Because
I don't blame him.
No, you can't blame him. Exactly.
Anybody over the age of about 23 and who's not fighting for a roster spot on this team in 2, 3, 4 years, I don't blame them for wanting a ticket out of town at this point.
Well, and you know what? But this is the interesting part, and this is where you can tell the difference. Because what game was it? I want to say it was the Dallas game, I believe, that James Van Riemsdyk got in a fight. And it's like, James Van Riemsdyk knows damn well he's playing his final 2 games as a Flyer coming up, right?
Well, right.
He knows it's over, but he's still going to fight somebody to defend a teammate, whereas you've got other guys who you're looking at and you're going, Kevin Hayes just wants his ticket out of here, and he's like, drag, he's dragging, and D'Angelo's starting to fall into the same category. Not that D'Angelo never went out and played. D'Angelo just hasn't been that good. Let's be real. He just hasn't been that good. But
you know what the difference is between those players in that situation, by the way?
What's that?
JVR is auditioning for a new contract.
Well,
so he still has something to go out there and play for, and it's literally just adding dollars to his.
You know what, though? I'm sorry. I think D'Angelo would fall into the same category because you know what's really easy to do if he doesn't want to be here and Torts doesn't want him here? You buy out that last year because it's only going to be about a $1.67 million cap hit for 2 more years.
But
what's the difference?
But if I point you at those 2 players,
right,
and tell you that one of them is going to react to this by coming out and being feisty and trying to be a leader and proving that he has some physicality and some feistiness, and one of them is going to go sulk in a corner and take stupid penalties, which one do you think is going to go in which direction?
Well, I hear you. I know what you're talking about, but like
the kid with consistent attitude problems, I'm going to pick him to be the one who does not handle.
Well, that's why I'm saying, why do you think the buyout sounds easier? What team, what team is trading for him for 1 year at $5 million? Unless, like, honestly, and I had this conversation I had this conversation this came up in the press box last night, and I was talking to Russ Cohen about this, and Russ even made a great suggestion. He goes, "Who's the only team, like, possibly if Arizona needs to get to the cap floor, maybe they'll do
who
it."
wants them?
Like Arizona, maybe.
And at this point, if you're an NHL team, and why would you sign him?
Well, and it's beside the point. I'm not trying to make this like a pile on session here.
That's
it's just
fair.
where it's just where it's at. Like, we can all read between the lines at this point. The guy's been scratched for 3 straight games.
Yep.
For God's sake, they dressed 13 forwards and 5 defensemen. Where, listen, reality is, if you didn't want to play him that badly, call up a defenseman.
They went 13-5.
Yeah, well, they went 13-5 because Nick Seeler was sick, which I understand. But still, okay, if you didn't,
you got a guy you're paying $5 million. You can get him in the lineup if you want to.
By the way, we didn't include this, but I'll just mention it now. The Phantoms clinched a playoff spot on Saturday, which is really good for them. By the way, that's awesome for player development. Awesome. But that's because that's awesome for player development. Like Sam Harrison's getting playoff games.
Awesome.
That's really good news. But okay, they clinched a playoff spot. Do they have anything left to play for? Then get Ronnie Attard back up.
Yep.
And let him play.
Yep.
Call up, like, there's Tortorella hinted that another defenseman may get a call up on Tuesday. So call him up now. Call him up for Sunday. Let him play.
I wonder if he knows that he's blowing his shot at playing for his childhood team.
I don't know.
And we can get off it now. I'm not going to keep sticking on it, but
because look,
come on, kid.
What did I tell you from the beginning? If there was something to come up with, if there was going to be something that happened, we were going to know about it. Now, I don't know the specifics of what happened, but he's done something to piss off his coach because his coach doesn't want to play him.
Look at his tape. That's what he's done to piss off his coach.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
He's probably had a garbage attitude about it.
Well, no, but here's the thing. I can't speak to that because I haven't heard anything about that. But
you don't even need to hear about it. Look at his attitude on the ice.
I understand, but I'm not.
He picks up a misconduct twice a month, just for mouthing off.
Well, I'll give you the empty netters when they get scored on at the end, and he just comes back and he's slamming his stick and breaking it into a million pieces because that's the way he reacts to things. I get that. I'm just talking about the part with Tortorella where it's like, listen, if something was going to happen, we were going to find out about it in one way or another. Yep. And the thing about Tortorella is that he can put up with all of that. He can put up with the attitude. He can put up with the feistiness and all the other stuff that he does because he likes how he plays on the edge, right? Until he does something that pisses him off, right? Yep. But it doesn't matter, what leads to whatever pisses Tortorella off. Whenever something, like at whatever point that sets him, whatever something sets him off, he makes up his mind. He does whatever he wants to do as the coach, and it's as simple as that. And if that I don't think it's any coincidence, not a coincidence, but it's like it's no secret that his name was out there, not at the deadline per se, but it was like, listen, it's not working. Shocker, it's not working. The guy that you traded 3 draft picks for that you didn't have any business in putting on your team in the first place.
Sign him.
Right, that you didn't have any business putting on your team in the first place because what was it going to solve? What did you think you were getting? The guy from Carolina last year who played with Jacob Slade Sorry, there's no Jacob Slavin on this team. So you're not getting
Nope.
that. So
Ivan Provorov ain't Jacob Slavin. I'm sorry.
And but it would just be like, at this point, I don't care which method you use. If it's buyout or if it's a trade, it doesn't matter which it's going to be.
Get him off the hockey team.
No, it's not a matter of just like that you have to do it. It's just whichever way it goes, because that's what they're headed towards. It just puts a bow on the one of the biggest debacles that Chuck Fletcher ever had as general manager, because you should have never made that deal in the first place, and you clinged on to the idea that maybe with the injured guys we could be better. Right? Yep. Like, you had 3 draft picks that you didn't need to move, and you did it anyway. It was incredibly dumb, and I just don't understand. I never understood it. I'm not surprised we're here. It just actually blows my mind that we are here, that it wasn't just going to ride out the contract and be like, okay, it's 2 years of a mistake, that it's actually going to come to terms of or come to a breaking point with they're headed towards it, they're headed towards the end of this thing in 1 year.
The 4 moves that doomed Chuck Fletcher, in my opinion, all came in the same offseason. And it's the D'Angelo trade at the draft.
Re-signing Rasmus Ristolainen. Re-signing Travis Sanheim.
No, it's the Gostisbehere trade. It's the Ristolainen.
No, then they're not the same offseason then.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Then they were over 2 off. They were within about a year of each other. It's close. The Tony D'Angelo trade at the draft, the Rasmus Ristolainen trade,
and re-signing,
and subsequent signing, the Shane Gostisbehere trade that was made to facilitate that deal, and it wasn't
Ryan Ellis. I guess.
No, it wasn't. So I actually didn't include Ryan Ellis in that because
I get your point. For the price of what it was, everybody would make that deal, even if it hasn't panned out. Yes, I get that.
Even looking back on it with 3 years of hindsight, you traded nothing in Nolan Patrick and Phil Myers for nothing in Ryan Ellis. So you traded nothing for nothing. You didn't lose that trade.
The only thing that you did that doesn't work is you added a very big contract that you can't move now.
That's fair.
Like if it wasn't working out with Nolan Patrick, that at least you had that ticket where it's like, well, he doesn't have a lot of contracts, so you're still stuck sitting with this contract that's got a $6.25 million cap hit, and Myers and Patrick are never going to make that in their career.
That is fair. Yeah. That is fair.
That's just the way it is. But other than that,
okay. I think we should circle all the way back around to this Flyers losing streak, because somehow we went way down the rabbit hole.
Well, because you asked me about the guy who hasn't played in 3 games, which is part of the losing streak. Yeah. I'll give you that. But and we also talked about disinterest. That's where we came from, because you brought up Kevin Hayes, and that turned into Kevin Hayes and D'Angelo and kind of and again, the difference between a guy like Kevin Hayes and seeing the level of disinterest, so it seems anyway. I mean, listen, he'll probably tell you it's not.
His level of disinterest. Stop it.
No, I know. I don't buy it. I'm just saying he'll tell you it's not, but whatever. And then, like I said, and James Van Riemsdyk, who is, as much as he's playing for a contract, he knows it's not with Philly, but he's still going to bat for his teammates,
exactly.
There's a different, that's what Tortorella talks about when it's being a good pro. What the situation is, and he does, but he's going to play it out.
James Van Riemsdyk has been put in an awful situation where the entire city wanted him traded, and he was not traded through no fault of his own, and he has responded really, really professionally on and off the ice. I have nothing but the highest compliments for James Van Riemsdyk, and I really do wish him the best.
I hope he goes to a spot where
I
hope he goes to a spot where he's got a shot.
I hope he goes to Seattle, because it would just be hilarious. He signed in Seattle 4 years by $2.5 million, and just goes and wins a cup under Dave Haxtell.
That'd be pretty funny. Yeah, I'll give you that. But
by the way, if Dave Haxtell wins the Jack Adams this year, anyway.
We can get into that later, because he's got a good chance of being a finalist. I'll give you that. I don't know if he's going to be the winner, because I think it's going to be really hard to overlook a coach who got a second chance and set some records.
Yeah, let's get into that. I think that actually serves as a pretty good transition. So
yes, let's go to this one then.
If you're watching on our YouTube channel, you may be looking and thinking, hey, is Kyle wearing a Boston Bruins jersey? And yes, I am. In case you were not aware, Sunday in Philadelphia, the Boston Bruins became the best regular season of all time, setting the single-season NHL wins record, passing the Detroit Red Wings, and they were tied with somebody else. I can't remember who it was. At 62 wins. The record... Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, and then the record is now 63.
Correct.
I'm sorry, it was Tampa Bay a couple years ago, was it not? The other team.
Well, so it's yes.
Okay. So the Boston Bruins now have the most wins in a single season in NHL history.
Yep.
And as I alluded to earlier, the Providence Bruins beat the Philadelphia Flyers on Sunday night for the most part. Linus Ullmark was the other name I was thinking of who was unavailable. Jeremy Swayman was excellent as the backup. We did not get to see the goalie hug because Linus Ullmark was not even on the bench.
The kid they brought up did his best, but I
think he respectfully did not attempt to imitate.
They joked he was going to fill in and do it anyway, but like he hugged him and like it was like a good hug. Like I'm not.
Yeah,
saying,
he came up and gave him a good little hug, but it wasn't the
goalie hug.
The social media hug.
Yeah, I realized about halfway through filming them coming off the bench, and it's like, oh wait, he's not here. They're not going to
do it. Nope.
Not the way that we want it to, anyway. But either way, so this is one of those moments for me, between covering the Flyers, covering the NHL, covering hockey in general, that I'll remember doing this game forever because of what it sets at this point.
Yeah,
it's a moment. It's a moment that I got to witness. There's something special about seeing NHL history. There's something special about also in addition to watching NHL history from that respect, from a team perspective, there's something special about watching a player as talented as David Pastrnak reach milestones with his 60th goal of the season and 300th of his career.
Special things. We looked before the show, and I'll pull back the curtain here a little bit. We were talking about David Pastrnak and the fact that he hit 60 and had a hat trick, and he's had all this success against the Flyers. The question came up how old he is.
Yes.
And you start talking. Well, I said 25. You're like, oh, he's way too young. He was drafted in 2014. And I went,
Well, yeah, 2014 and played right away.
Well, right, exactly. And we looked it up, and he is 26 years old.
That's how you get there. He's 26, 27, exactly.
Yep.
So,
and
the reason why that came up, by the way, the reason that came up is because if he's already at 300 goals in his career, and you've got at least 10 to 15 years of runway left.
Assuming he stays healthy, knock on wood.
I mean, we're looking at 600 goals probably.
And 7 is not out of the realm of possibility.
Certainly not. But we're looking at doubling that. 1,000 points is absolutely going to happen.
Think about it. What's scoring done in the last 3 to 5
Oh, it only goes. Yeah, I know. It's only going higher. And
if things open up even more, if the game gets faster and more skill-based, David Pastrnak has proven he has the skill set to keep up.
And not only that, but here's the thing I think, and this year in particular is really important for that, because he hasn't always had the chance to play with, like before in years past, especially early in his career, it would have been the story of, well, look who he's playing with. He's got Marchand and Bergeron. Like, of course he's getting points. Look at who's helping set him up. And he plays on that power play and he still does play on that power play. I get it. But I've seen more from him this year in particular where he does it himself. He's the best player on that team. And it almost feels like by a mile. Like
that run to the Stanley Cup Finals, I think, is really where a lot of people in 2019, I'm talking about when they lost to the Blues. That I think is really where a lot of people looked at David Pastrnak and went from, okay, he's benefiting playing on this line with these all-time great players, Bruins legends, surefire Hall of Famers in and of themselves, to, oh, he's like a real contributor. And then as time has gone on, and maybe Bergeron slowed down a little bit. Maybe, Marchand has focused a little more on other activities. But it becomes more and more clear that offensively speaking, that offense, and especially that power play, runs straight through David Pastrnak.
Well, and I'll give you two examples of this from just watching him on Sunday in general, or actually, probably both watching Saturday and Sunday, because on Saturday, Boston didn't have many power. I think they had one power play in the game on Sunday against the Flyers. So there's not a lot of time to see. And again, look, without Bergeron, it changes things to begin with. But there wasn't a lot of opportunity to see the power play run through whomever, like when there's only one. But they had plenty on Saturday. And every chance that they got was get it over that direction. Let him just fire away.
Oh, they were feeding them.
Now, and here's the thing. With only one power play on Sunday, he had 10 shots on goal in the game. Everything was, get it over to him.
The phrase shooters shoot was invented for David Pastrnak.
Sure. And here's the thing. He gets into a 2-on-1 as he's going down for the hat trick. And look, I'll just be blunt about it. You're an idiot if you didn't think that Tyler Bertuzzi was passing back to him. Everybody knew where it was going. And the only thing that he did that was a little deceptive is, and I agreed with this because I think Darren Pang said this on the broadcast, you're thinking he's going to go high glove and just rip it. And he just put it 5-hole instead, which, that's goal scoring for you. That's a goal scorer
right there.
Right. But it is. But that's a goal scorer for you. Who knows? He's thinking this, so I'm going to do something totally different.
He's going to be selling out for Top Glove, which means his 5-hole is all mine.
Now being on the other end of history is always going to sting to some extent. It wasn't surprising given what both teams have been through this season. And like I said earlier, I give the Flyers credit that this was way more of a game from them than I would have ever expected. The last handful, with the way, with the way St. Louis and Dallas and the Islanders was going, it just looks like it just looked like the way a team typically does when you get to game 75, 77, 80 of another frustrating season. You just want it over with.
Yep.
Right. Now, I want to talk about something else that kind of goes into this, and because I know you texted about this a little bit, so I want to kind of get into...
Before we dive on that, I do want to make one more mention of history.
Sure.
For the record, I didn't expect the game to be close enough for Jeremy Swayman to be shooting at an empty net.
When the empty net was there, I had my eyes all over.
He wanted it.
Well, if both of them, it doesn't matter which goalie gets to start. Both of them are very much the type where it's like, if it's there, I'm trying.
Absolutely.
Ullmark is prepared to go for a second one this year, and Swayman looks like he wants his. So
and quite frankly, they'll both be looking in the playoffs too. It's not going to stop either one of them. When your coach comes out publicly, first of all, it was a 2-goal game, and I think that makes all the difference. It's a 5-3 game at that point. The Flyers have the net when Swayman shot.
Yes.
In the playoffs, I think he's taking that same shot every time because Patrice Bergeron's on the ice, and you've already had your coach come out and say, well, if we have to win a face-off, we're okay. And I know we've talked a little bit about this Bruins team, and we've talked a little bit about the fact that we're doing a playoff prediction next week, but spoiler alert, they ain't going out early in my bracket.
Well, I hear you there. Speaking of being good at faceoffs, by the way, do you realize what Thomas Nosek's percentage was in the game last night for faceoffs?
I do not.
He was 15 of 16 on faceoffs. That's a 93.8% success rate.
Tell me it's game 78 without telling me it's game 78.
Well, it's 80 at this point, but still.
Fair enough.
But my point was, look how good he is at faceoffs, and Bergeron's not playing, and
Krejci is there too.
Well, Krejci's not playing right now either. So Pavel Zacha was 50% on faceoffs. The Flyers actually did have some guys who were north of 50 or at 50, but
Sean Couturier hasn't touched the ice this year.
No, I know. I meant in the game. Not
no, I know. I just mean in general. That's
but either way,
that's your face-off guy now.
Okay, so I want to talk about something else kind of around this game for a second, because obviously, and you texted about this a little bit, because the noise level was I guess very palpable on the broadcast as much as it was where I was sitting in the
It
building.
legitimately sounded, and like, okay, we sit here and talk about, oh, it sounded like a Rangers home game and blah blah blah, and what we mean by that is when the Rangers score, you hear Rangers fans cheering.
Right.
This was not that. This sounded like a Bruins home game in the fact that it let's go Bruins chants all night, uninterrupted,
Right.
multiple and listen. I talked about it on the Rangers thing.
Sure.
When that happened a couple weeks ago. It's gonna happen, right? And this trip wasn't quite as easy. I'm not sure how many people came down from Boston, but
Seemed like a pretty good amount.
what I mean is I don't know how many people came down from Boston and how much it was. Every Boston fan within 60 minutes of the Wells Fargo Center came out because tickets were $12.
I get that.
And it's history. And here's the thing. Fans are going to come out for an opportunity to see history. I'd be curious to watch those StubHub ticket prices on Saturday evening and see if they jumped at the end of that game.
Sure. Well, all right. So I got a whole little clip of notes here from this whole thing because this was really going around all day. And it's not that I don't get it. I just want to kind of clarify the difference from the Ranger game to this game. Because here's the thing. I don't have this written down, but I'm just going off of my own viewpoint of it. I don't think there were more Bruins fans in the building percentage-wise than Ranger fans from that game. I don't think it was quite, like I told you, it was probably like 70-30 for that Ranger game. I don't think it was quite that. It was closer to 50-50 probably on this one, but they were louder because of what was at stake, because they're going to the play. And then I understand the Ranger fans who show up for a game in March are going to get loud, but it's still just a regular season game in March.
Rangers fans suck. We can just say that.
Well, no, but I wouldn't say that, but
I will.
I know you will.
Bite me, Rangers fans.
But this and let me tell you, by loud, playoff loud.
Yep. So I talked earlier. I talked earlier about a lot of beatdowns this type of year, a lot of 7-1 games. The players are getting themselves in a playoff form. The fans are too, baby. Boston is ready.
So here's where I want to take this whole thing. So just allow me a minute or two here to kind of go through this. John Tortorella said something after the game, this particular game, that really resonated with me, that I felt like was a big summary of this. And look, there's a lot of stuff that gets said in post games at this time of year that you can see right through because it's nothing more than cliche. And, Tortorella himself kind of teeters on the edge of being the upfront and honest guy with sticking up for the team and the organization and basically almost gaslighting the fans into talking about more competitive efforts and being involved in games and maybe more on the progress and all that type of stuff. Like, he really kind of he walks that line a little bit. And some days it's very much believable, and other days it's like, what are you talking about? Like, anybody who pays attention can see that. But in this case, he talked again about going through the pain and having Boston fans take over the building is part of the process and where they currently are. And I want to read the quote that I think stands out the most. And then, so here's what he says. He goes, "That's how you build a team. You don't win when you build. You have to go through some crap. The losing sucks. It's our 7th game in 11 nights, I think. But when you're losing the amount of games we have of late, that takes the energy out of you too, as far as there's just no fun. But that's part of it. You have to go through it. No team builds the proper way by winning right away or not going through this stuff here. It's all part of it, and we're going to keep on going about our business and get to the next steps as we move forward here." The part that really stands out to me, and I'll repeat the line again, the losing sucks. It's our 7th game in 11 nights, but when you're losing the amount of games we have of late, that takes the energy out of you too, as far as there's just no fun. Yep. The reason that this stands out is, again, a lot of comments over the last 24 hours about how embarrassing it is to see Boston fans do what they did, the size of the crowd, the hats on the ice for a hat trick by an opposing player.
A lot of hats.
Yeah. the Let's Go Bruins chants. They were chanting by the end of the game. They were chanting, "We want the cup," and so on. Like, I get it.
Oh, they own that building by the end of that game.
Sure. Here's the thing. It's a two-way street. If you find that embarrassing, you have the ability to change that as a fan.
Put a product on the ice that isn't embarrassing.
Hold on. You can. I hear you. You can, but like as a fan, you can buy the ticket and take the seat and come down and make sure a Boston fan doesn't get the ticket if you don't want to
buy the ticket and not go if you're really.
Well, I hear you there, but but the truth is, if you don't like it, buy the tickets. But if you are also fed up and tired of watching the product on the ice, and your answer is,
don't spend your money.
I'm not buying tickets anymore. I refuse to give them my money until things get better, and it's worth it to me.
The tickets are available for fans of the other team.
Right, and this is going to happen. Consider this. Okay, it's Easter Sunday. The Phillies were playing across the street in the afternoon. There's 3 more games left at that time in another frustrating and forgettable season. Most sports fans in this town want the season over with, just so there isn't a constant reminder that, like, oh yeah, they're still playing games. Like, honestly, when I put a preview out there and I have to tweet out, yeah, the Flyers are back on the ice on Tuesday night to play, it's like you're waiting for the comments of, really, they're still going? Like, isn't it over? I thought it was over. It felt like it was over in December, right? Like
6 ABC Sports section cannot wait to get their 45 seconds of time back from showing Flyers highlights.
Right now, and then take the other side. Boston's going for an NHL record, has a player about to score 60 goals, is as legitimate a cup contender as anyone out there in the league, obviously, so the fans are willing to travel. That's how it goes.
Also, it might be, any local fans, it also might be their last chance to see Patrice Bergeron.
I don't know if, local Boston fans, I guess.
Well, I'm saying, if you're a local Boston fan, and he ended up not playing, so, I mean, unfortunate if that's why you were coming.
Well, different story, too, because local Boston fans may have had this already circled, and it's like, oh, I'm getting tickets.
Oh,
but then others probably jumped in when it was like, oh, look what's at stake, too. You know, like, I get that.
Like I said, tracking that price on Saturday night, I'm sure prices went up.
No, they might have a little. I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't check on Sunday specifically, but either way. Right. But think, like, okay, so to go off of that, when you look at Boston's whole big picture here, going for the record, player on the verge of 60 goals against a team that he plays incredibly well against. So you knew, even though he was on 57 coming in, the possibility exists. You know, they're a legit cup contender by being, you know, the President's Trophy winner, all that. So you're willing to travel, right? Think about the days, and this still happens in some cases. Like, this isn't like a thing, like a days past kind of thing. When you would watch an Eagles game in Washington or a Phillies game in Washington, and people from Philly traveled well because they wanted to support their team because of how successful it was, while the teams in Washington were awful. If you have a problem with that, then you shouldn't have a problem when somebody else does it to you because your team is god awful. Yep. You know, like it's the same thing. It's not like the word is not. I mean, look, I understand where embarrassing comes from when you see this, but the word that you need to use with it is reality. That's what it is. Like, you can either make your voices heard and save your time and money on something that you feel, you know, like is more worthwhile for you specifically, or you can go fill the seats and help ensure that even if they really wanted to, no opposing fan can get in. You can't have it both ways in times that are like this. And the only thing you can hope for at this stage of the season or at this stage of the whole thing is that changes continue to come because of things like this. Like, that was the whole conversation we had, because when we did the Rangers stuff, when it happened against the Rangers, it was fresh off, like our show anyway, it was fresh off the deadline debacle. And it's like, well, nothing's changed either. That's why it's really frustrating. It's like, look at this. Rangers fans are taking over your building. It's all the same people upstairs. So who cares at this point? Like, does anybody care that this is happening? At least now, like, listen, by changing up a couple of things, like, you know, firing your general manager and having a new CEO of Comcast-Spectacor, it didn't mean that it was going to change things overnight for the rest of this season. So you kind of still have to eat it.
Yep.
You know, but again, to go back to kind of the whole big picture of this from an overall hockey perspective, you know, kudos to the Boston Bruins for what they've done. I watched essentially all of Saturday's game against the Devils that they played, which, by the way, that has me geared up for what's next, like a week from now. because that felt like playoff hockey. It has me ready to go. They got, and that team, just in general, that team has gotten contributions from top to bottom. It's been as complete a team as I've seen in the league in a long time. Like, I think you kind of have to go back to the way Tampa was.
Yeah,
it is special to watch, and it's like you brought up Dave Haxtell and the Jack Adams thing. I think it's really hard to avoid giving Jim Montgomery the Jack Adams for everything. And here's the thing too: how do you not feel good for him?
Oh, sure.
The guy who was out, pretty much essentially done with his NHL career from a coaching
never work again,
right? And gets his second chance and turns it into the best team that we've ever seen.
Yep.
That has the most wins in NHL history and is 2 points away from having a record for points in a season by themselves.
I know the Bruins have a really good social media department, a good digital department. I know Behind the B is a big thing. But this is the last dance. We all know it. We pulled David Krejci back from from Czechia to come be on this team. We know David Pastrnak's contract is up. We know blah, 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 blah. We know this, that, the other. We know Patrice Bergeron might be retiring. There better be a documentary crew following this team. Because holy smokes. Like I said, they are special to watch. I mentioned earlier that in our preseason, or in our playoff predictions next week, we're going to be talking about them quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Man, the Bruins are the definition of a wagon too.
Oh yeah,
front, back, up, down, left, right. Their goalies are a tandem who love each other. It's
yeah, they are. Here's the thing about two of those players that you mentioned, though. By the way, and yes, listen, there is, as much as it feels like last dance, and listen, I think if they win, it's going to be really hard for guys to not just go out on top.
But if anybody can do it, it's Patrice Bergeron.
What do you mean, like?
And go out on top. No, go out on top.
Oh, no,
win and walk away.
Oh no. What I'm saying is that because my point is that you're look, we don't. The playoffs are unpredictable. We know this. So
sure,
if they do win, then I do think it's the opportunity to go out on top like that. But I have heard some things kind of from the Boston sector of the hockey world that a lot of what was going on, especially with Krejci and leaving and all that stuff like he did.
Was a lot of that COVID?
No, a lot of it was the coach. Really? That when they made the coaching change,
it made him a little more.
Quite literally, he was in. Yeah, like he was in, and now they're having a lot of fun again. And it may not so much like this may not be a last dance completely.
Do you think Kyle Dubas just threw up in his mouth a little bit?
Look, and again, that's what I've heard. Right. I don't know what the discussion's like around the league and all that stuff like that, but like you gotta wonder if if these guys do decide to come back for more, what it's gonna look like, how but
yeah.
So how about we get this and we start talking while we're on the Bruins specifically, and
I did want to hit one more. I want to hit one more little historical thing. So
okay, you were going to do that
because I do consider this history. So we are recording this on Monday evening, and as we record here, currently at about 8:52 Eastern time, the Ottawa Senators are taking on the Carolina Hurricanes. Mm-hmm. And during this game, hold on, I want to get the timing right. I did just have it up. So at the 17:26 mark of the first period, Tim Stützle scored with an assist from Claude Giroux and another one from Brady Tkachuk. That assist from Claude Giroux will serve as his 1,000th career NHL point.
Correct.
So I do just want to make us the first podcast on earth to congratulate Claude Giroux for 1,000 career NHL points, because we are recording it while that game is still going, and I doubt anyone beat us to the punch.
Can we extend? Because you mentioned it's historical, and guess what? You would be right, because you know what is really historical about this?
Okay.
Because we might as well get this in here as well. At the 3:37 mark of the second period in the Dallas-Detroit game, Joe Pavelski also joined the 1,000-point club with a deflection goal. It is the first time in NHL history that two players have reached 1,000 on the same night.
And they both did it just in the most
predictable ways for both of
personal
them.
way possible, right?
Yes.
Pavelski with a tip in and Claude Giroux with an assist off a turnover. We
Gotta
love
love it. Yeah.
We love it.
But I do, like, look, obviously,
Congratulations to both.
Well, congratulations to both, but obviously we're putting a little bit of an emphasis on Giroux here because,
most of those points came in a Flyers uniform.
Yes, and here's the other thing too, by the way. Giroux, when he left or when he was done playing for the team, had a pretty round number in
1,000
points.
games.
Well, in games and points, because he had 900 points.
He had 900 points, right? Okay, right.
Because he had 23 more points in the 18 games with Florida, and now is at 77.
Good for Claude with 100 points over the last year and a bit. Good for him.
That would be a total of what? So 8. That's 99 games to get to 100 more points. So he still got it. Point per game player.
Claude, Cap, congratulations.
So now, unfortunately, though, if we're gonna segue to this, unfortunately, this is cool that Claude Giroux gets this, whatever. But I think he'd rather, instead of the 1,000th point, be playing playoff hockey, and he's not gonna be.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the Ottawa Senators are gonna fall a little bit short this year. They did stay in the race a lot longer than I think a lot of people thought they would. Unfortunately, as we come down the stretch here, they're out. They're just too far out to make it up. Honestly, there's really only one race. There's one race in each conference, and it's for the wild card. The divisions are
by playoff spot. Yes, there's a couple other races within.
That's fair.
So at this stage of the game, I'll run it down because I do have it in front of me.
Yeah.
So we already said Boston's won the President's Trophy on top of being one of the
2 weeks
greatest,
ago.
Right? Like on top of being one of the greatest teams, the greatest regular season team of all time, really at this point.
That does indeed earn them home ice advantage through the postseason.
Sure. And at this point, there's no drama for the rest of the Atlantic either because Toronto pulled away in second. So that margin is too much to make up. It's Toronto, Tampa in the first round of the playoffs. Toronto is going to have home ice. Can't wait. That's a good playoff series to start off with, right?
I pick the blue team.
Good call.
Yeah.
I pick 7 games.
Oh God, I hope so.
That's what I picked.
I pick Braden Point more than 4 goals.
Oh, for the whole series? Ooh,
Yep.
I like that. Now that doesn't help me beyond the regular season because I'm not playing fantasy anymore. Me
neither.
But you know what? If I get the trophy, like I said, my dad and I split the team. But if we get the trophy at the end, which we're in a good spot right now because we are in a championship and we're holding serve at the moment. Let's just call it that. But I'm not going to try to jinx it. But
also, if you're a longtime listener to the show, Mike lost in fantasy hockey, so love that. All right, moving on.
But the Metro is very intriguing, because even though we know what 3 teams are going to be the top 3 in the Metro,
we really can't
give you an order. It's going to be anything. It's Carolina, New Jersey, and the Rangers are all separated by 3 points.
Yep, and Carolina is, as mentioned, currently trailing the Ottawa Senators. And
the Rangers are beating Buffalo 2-1.
Yeah, so this division
we have
just.
And New Jersey doesn't play tonight, by the way, so New Jersey's idle.
I hope for the good of the league that Carolina can win that division just so we get New Jersey, New York in the first round because holy smokes. Give me 4 to 7 games of that. Come on. I hear you
there. Now, let me double check something here. Okay, so and this is as they go to the third or they're in the third period, I should say, but Florida is playing Toronto.
Not necessarily. That is still kind of.
Well,
Florida's playing Toronto right now. I'm sorry.
Right, and Florida is trailing 1-0. I believe I saw with a win, Florida is in.
Interesting.
So
that makes sense.
Right. So because of that, or not because of that, but it's with a win, Florida has a clinching scenario, or at least has a clinching scenario tonight, but a win is part of the equation.
It'll be the same with the Islanders, but they're currently down 3-0 to the Capitals after 2. So which looks tough.
So there's 2 things here to consider then. One is Florida thanks the Islanders and vice versa because it helps both at this point.
Right.
But Pittsburgh is really thanking both of them right about now. And now Florida is a lot it's a 1-goal game. And by the way, Florida is out shooting Toronto 32-15 as we speak. So I think you can imagine that there's a team making a push right now to possibly get in there. And
one team's trying to make the playoffs. The other is known who their first round matchup has been since about Thanksgiving.
Exactly. So that's really, but really, and the other part of the equation, by the way, is Buffalo is trailing, as I mentioned, trailing the Rangers going to the third period there as well. But if Buffalo does not win this game, given everything else, they will be out.
They'll be done. Yeah. And they have to win the rest of their games and get a little bit of help.
Lost. They're basically hanging on by a thread, so it's more than likely over.
But you know what? Honestly, if you're looking at the Atlantic Division for next year, you got Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit, all right there, all ready to take another step forward. Man, the Atlantic's going to be fun for a couple years.
Here's the thing. So basically, we've got the final 9 teams. Like we know 6 that are in. We have 2 teams 2 spots available, 3 teams realistically battling for it. So we're down to 9 teams that could be in. We know a lot of this already. Do you want to go over what our predictions in the East were versus what happened? Some of them are going to be easy, by the way. Like, let's just take some of the drama out of this, by the way. We both got Carolina, we both got the Rangers, we both got Tampa, and we both got Toronto. Let's just wipe those 4 out so we cut it in half and we can
nice and easy
condense it for time, right?
I know for a fact I had the Boston Bruins out. That's one of the reasons I am wearing this jersey today. I am paying a penance for that.
There you go. That's fair. Does it count if I paid mine back at a wedding in November? Because I did wear it for. I wore it in public, no less. So I really made it count.
At a place where pictures are going to get taken.
Oh, there's photographic evidence somewhere. I don't have it. I don't have it like immediately available. But it's there. It exists. I also, by the way, did not have Boston in, and I actually took the quote from our episode earlier before the season started about why I didn't think they were going to make it. I actually said I think they're going to. It's going to be a bit of a long year with the guys they are missing. It was, spoiler alert, it was not, and a bunch of those guys were not out as long as everybody thought they were going to be, and that kind of helped too. I did not think their goalies were going to be as good as they were, although I'm not disappointed because thank you, Lena Solmark, in fantasy again. That kind of stuff, but I did not have them in either. Do you recall who the rest of your other 4 teams were that didn't or that may not make it? I'll say it that way.
In the East,
yes.
I think I had. Did I have Pittsburgh in?
You had Pittsburgh in.
Okay, I thought
which still could be true. By the way,
possibility, right?
Well, and by the way, I also had Pittsburgh.
I had the Rangers in, did I not?
Yeah, I already said that. We already.
Okay.
I took out the easy ones, like the ones that were so surefire.
I had the Devils in, right? Because that was the surprise. I had them out. Wow.
No, you had the tried and true top 4 as we've known it
Washington,
before.
Pittsburgh.
Right. So you had Carolina, Rangers, Pittsburgh, Washington, Tampa, Toronto, and then kind of the 2 that you substituted in for the likes of a Boston and whatnot were Detroit and Ottawa.
Okay.
Which I understand where you were coming from doing it.
Sure, I feel good about the call, but it has not worked out that way.
By the way, my 8 were Carolina, Rangers, Pittsburgh, Washington, Tampa, Toronto, Ottawa, Florida. So I may end up being right about one extra one than you were, but that's about it. We both whiffed on New Jersey. The quote I have from myself, because you really just kind of gave your list and I did the explanations with it.
Fair.
More so, but the quote that I gave for New Jersey was, I still think it's too early. I think they'll be better, but it's still going to be too early. Wrong.
They're just a wagon.
By the way, for Washington, I had Washington in the playoffs, but I was closer on this one probably than most would be, because I actually said I'd have them in, but if one team's going to screw this up, it's going to be them. So I actually said those words. And in fairness, if the Islanders pull this out and make it, I had, if anyone's going to challenge to knock Washington out, I'm curious to see what the Islanders do. Last year made no sense for them, so close enough. I do take credit for getting, if Florida makes it, I'll take credit for the fact that I said I don't see much of a drop-off. So it was a little bit of an interesting year.
Not necessarily correct about that, right? They won the President's Trophy last year, right?
Yeah, and they did it a backwards way, but they would still be a playoff team. So that would
It's
work.
not how you start, it's how you finish.
Now, my response for I did not put Detroit in like you did, but my response for Detroit was it's tough to leave them out. Everything I like about Ottawa is the guys they already had that continue to develop. On paper, I really like their offseason. On paper, I really like Detroit's offseason, I should say, but there's not enough names for me to be convinced. So
Fair
it
enough.
kind of had to do with, like, I don't know
And it
if they
kind of
had
played
the
out
same.
that way.
Right.
They were probably one piece short. If they have one more like top 6 forward, they might be in contention for a playoff spot. But
So that was the whole thing with the East, and we really whiffed on the Boston thing.
yeah, we sure did.
All right,
But I think a lot of people did.
Want to do the West?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you want to do the easy part first again?
Well, yeah. Let me rattle off who's there right now because we haven't actually talked about the Western Conference as it sits currently.
And the scenarios. The Central is fun.
The Central is wide open. It looks a lot like the top 3 in the Metro right now in terms of Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota are all the teams that are going to be there in the top 3 spots. It's just kind of a matter of who ends up shuffling where. Dallas, Minnesota, Colorado, any combination of them is just going to be a really incredibly fun matchup in the first round.
Colorado has got a massive advantage here with the game on Friday. Okay. I mean, massive in the fact that they get to play pretty much the last game of the year and already have a 2-point lead. Like, they might go into that and look, they may already know that they've won the division.
That is fair.
They may
be able to rest guys.
Right. Well, no, they may be able to get a point out of the game and not have to go crazy with it. I mean, they're playing. Well, I almost say only. They're playing Nashville, and that's really intriguing. Also, because Nashville is not dead yet. Like that could be all or nothing for Nashville.
That could be a game where the division and the playoffs are on the line.
Sure.
And that's a playoff game in my books. Win or go home.
One thing I do think about the way that the Central stacks up now is, and I won't say I'm not surprised. I'm kind of like with Minnesota. I kind of understand how Minnesota's third in that division is what I'm kind of getting at. I really didn't want to see a scenario where Colorado and Dallas had to play each other in the first round. I don't want to see that. I really would love it if that was the second round. Save that.
Yeah.
To me, that just feels like the 2 best teams out of that division, and I'd want to see that later.
But the thing is, the winner of that division,
I know they're going to get.
That is probably the hardest wild card matchup.
Well,
you're going to get whoever doesn't make it out of the Pacific. You're going to get either LA or Seattle. Probably.
Well, hold on. You don't know that because maybe that's what's at stake for Colorado in the last
Vegas
game.
is going to pick up 2 or 3 or 4 more points over their last 2 games.
And what if they slip up though?
Who does Vegas play? Let me take a look.
But even in just one game.
They only really need 2 points to put some comfortable distance there. They have Seattle, who, again, is going to be a team that's fighting. So that's a tough matchup.
You know what? No, I'll tell you what. For everybody else.
They have Seattle again. Both games are against Seattle. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Vegas' last 2 games are against Seattle.
I love this. I love it so much.
Oh, my God.
And Seattle's trying to avoid playing a division winner.
And so Thursday's game is already on ESPN. My God. Holy smokes. The NHL schedule makers just
sometimes they have a winner. They whiffed on no games on Friday and the 2 games on Sunday being kind of
sometimes they send you to Europe in November, but then sometimes they give you stuff like this.
Sure. Well, because here's the part, because here's the other part of it that I'm not like. Let's go to the drama of the Pacific then. Who's winning the division? Because there's not a guarantee that it's Vegas. It could be Edmonton, and Edmonton has been on a freaking tear in the last few weeks. They're about as unbeatable as anybody, close to as unbeatable as Boston has been.
Yeah, so the Pacific is a really interesting dynamic. You have Vegas and Edmonton as the top 2 teams. They're fighting it out for winning the division. Then you have LA and Seattle that are there fighting it out as we sit here right now.
And wild card.
As we sit here right now, LA has 80 games played, 100 points. Seattle has 79 games played, 98 points. So things are right up in the air for that. And then the winner will play Edmonton. The loser will play probably the winner of the Central as it sits right now. But I don't know who I'd rather play. I'd rather play a division winner than Connor McDavid in the first round after his 150-point season.
You got some like
because by the way, Connor McDavid hit 150 points since our last show. Hello.
You want to keep going with this around the league stuff, by the way? So McDavid, yes, you're right. McDavid hit 150 points, whatever. By the way, literally as I'm speaking to you about this, more NHL history. Erik Karlsson just got to 100 points on the season. He's only the sixth defenseman ever to do that.
Probably just won the Norris too, then.
And first defenseman, by the way, since 91-92 when Brian Leetch did it. So quite literally something we haven't seen in 31 years.
Yep.
You know.
And that tracks out nicely because the 150-point thing was 95, 96 the last
something
time
like that.
happened.
Yeah, it's like we're really seeing like this is where the game's going from an offensive standpoint for sure.
And that's why I mentioned that David Pastrnak stopping at 700 is not him getting to 700 is not out of the realm.
So okay, so we already covered basically. So we covered the central race is very much a big thing. The Pacific Division title race, the Pacific third place race, and then for the last wild card spot, you have one spot available and three teams that are still really like alive in the thing.
And somebody decent is going to miss out.
Somebody decent. Somebody decent. No, I'll tell you what it's really going to be. It's not going to be just somebody decent misses out. It's going to be somebody who's going to regret not turning it on soon enough.
Well,
I think that's going to be. I think Calgary and Nashville could fall into that category if Winnipeg make it.
I am rooting so hard for Nashville because they sold at the deadline, and if they can win their last couple games, get a little lucky with the math elsewhere, and sneak in after trading away Tanner Jeannot and getting 5 assets. They traded somebody else. They traded Ekholm away to the Oilers.
Right. And I mean, got Tyson Barrie back, which has kind of been a nice fit for them. But
sure, but you know what I mean. And we're talking about the fact that they have reduced assets and are still sitting here right in the thick of the playoff race. Bill Poyle, I know David Poyle, I know he's retiring, but he's done a fantastic job. He is going out supremely strong.
So I'm trying to look and see. Okay, that does make it intriguing because so Nashville plays later tonight, about a 9:30 start time. We're a little shy of that right now, and they play Calgary, which is already intriguing. Yes,
that's a playoff game.
Exactly. Now the catch here is Winnipeg is already playing San Jose and winning 5-2,
and probably a game they're going to win.
Right, but when you get to the later part of the week. On Thursday, Nashville plays Minnesota, who may not have as much to play for by Thursday because the division may be out of reach.
Can shake out,
right? Which and
Nashville, they'll probably be playing for home ice though.
Maybe it depends on.
It's very likely that Thursday game is a live, active game for both teams.
The key here. Well, okay, here's the key. So Minnesota tomorrow plays Winnipeg.
Ooh.
I know.
What a game.
And then after that, Winnipeg plays Colorado while Nashville plays Minnesota.
And that's on that last day of the season, right?
So there's a distinct possibility that because of what's at stake, Winnipeg could lose the last 2 games of the season.
There's a possibility, because of what's at stake, that both of those games on that final day matter.
Sure.
And I think the NHL would love nothing more.
Well, and by the way, can I add also, because Winnipeg's home tonight against San Jose, they're on the road against Minnesota and then on the road against Colorado, while Nashville will be home against Minnesota and then home against Colorado on Thursday, Friday.
I knew that they were going to be home toward the end of the week because those are the games that got postponed because their arena was flooding.
Right. But so if you can get a situation where maybe that means something for Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they find a way, because it's at home, to get the crowd into it and find a way to be, kind of still hanging in that race. We'll see.
Okay.
But a lot of fun stuff going on. So let's
hit our predictions on this.
Yeah. Sure. All right. So do you want to do yours first?
Let me rattle off the ones I think we both got in common, because I think we both had Colorado.
Yes, I'm making sure of this. Yeah, we both had Colorado.
I think we
obviously.
both had Vegas.
We did not.
Really? Did I have Vegas out?
No, you had them in. I didn't.
I had them in. Okay. Come on,
Uh,
Come
that,
on.
I know.
Come
I'll tell you why.
on.
I'll. You want me to read you the quote that I had for Vegas not making
Yeah.
it? I don't think they make it because I don't like their goaltending,
Logan.
and I was proven wrong. So I'll eat it.
Logan Thompson through the first 40 games. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, then they go and get Jonathan Quick too. Which
I know. Oh man, if
right, do you want to hit?
If we get Vegas, LA in the first round, oh mamma mia, that's a spicy matchup. Yeah, oh come on!
All right, do you want to hit a couple of the obvious ones that we both?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
All right, we both had Edmonton and LA.
Okay.
Both got that one. We ultimately both had Colorado. We said we both had Dallas.
Okay. Four that we had.
I had a couple of really bad misses in this one. You didn't do near as bad. And oh, by the way,
I know I had Anaheim. I know that's a pretty rough one, but
that's the only rough one you had because the rest of your playoff teams, at least as of today, and this can change. But the only here's the rest of your playoff teams. So we said Edmonton, LA. You said Vegas, Colorado, Dallas. You also had Minnesota in there correctly, and you had Calgary.
Let's go, Calgary.
We both had Calgary, by the way, so I won't. I actually said something worse than just having Calgary in. I said they were going to win the Pacific.
Oof.
Yeah, I struck out bad on that.
Yeah, we talk about teams not playing for their coaches. Man, that's a
yeah.
team not
Well,
playing
guess
for their
what?
coach.
That's a team that if they lose, okay, we just said they're playing Nashville in like a half hour, right? They lose to Nashville, that's trouble.
Yeah,
big trouble. Well, because they also only have 2 games left, so you know what? This is that the game they're playing tonight is one of the 2 left. They lose, they can't catch Winnipeg. Because
I don't
Winnipeg
think
will
he
have won.
should. I don't think he should. But if the Calgary Flames miss the playoffs, I wonder if Brad Treliving loses his job.
I think it's becoming more and more likely by the hour.
And for the record, I think Brad Treliving is a smart, really good GM. And if he wants to be a president of hockey ops, I would call him the day after Calgary lets him go. But anyway.
But that's potentially one of the big misses, right? So I'll give you my. I also had Anaheim in there because I really liked their young core, and it didn't completely pan out. I mean, let's remember how early in the year they lost Drysdale. That was killer for them. It kind of all went off the rails very quickly. They were just, you saw it pretty early in the year. They just kind of once you lose it, it's hard to get back, and they've really just and they've had guys in and out of the lineup that really prevented them from ever getting on the roll that we thought they could, I guess. So it's just I love their future. I still love their future. That's not going to change. And if nothing else, Anaheim is going to be right up there in the draft odds, and they're getting a good player. I don't know. It may not be the player.
And if it is, like with a lot of teams in that bottom 5, if it is that player, they become a lot more of a viable option instantly.
Sure, absolutely. Yep. I had Minnesota out of the playoffs.
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is. And I will tell you what I said that was trying to justify my reasoning back in October that turned out to be wrong. I said I wasn't super high on Minnesota. Marc-Andre Fleury, if he gets hurt, they're done. I don't love their defenseman. Well, he never got hurt, number one. He played his usual workload. And I was just wrong about a lot with it. They got good depth, that team. I mean, that's a deeper team than a lot of people would think.
And as deep as that team is, the biggest question surrounding them coming into the playoffs is going to be, and obviously there's a little bit of a tease for next week, is going to be the health of Kirill Kaprizov.
Oh, I think he's already back, though, isn't he?
Yeah, but is he back or is he back?
Well, I think he's back right now so that when the playoffs start, he can be back.
I think that's the idea, but we'll see if it actually plays out that way.
I will. By the way, my other big whiff in this was I had St. Louis in the playoffs.
Okay.
I kind of went more off of last year. Look, the one thing I'll say for St. Louis is once it didn't go the way that it should, they did the right thing.
Absolutely.
They sold off the guys they could sell off. Now, I will give myself a little credit for this one because even though I didn't have them in the playoffs, it's a team I'm not surprised to see in the playoffs, kind of, because I said for Seattle, I'm probably going to have Seattle first team out of the playoffs. I actually said that at the beginning of the year that I thought they were going to be the first team out. No, you did not have them in.
Okay.
No, you took your shot with Anaheim mostly, and
That's
that
fair.
was, and then didn't really go. You didn't veer in any direction. You took Anaheim and replaced St. Louis. That was what you did from last year's playoffs. You liked everybody else that much.
Okay, it played out mostly that way.
And this was the thing. A lot for me, a lot of the teams, because I'm not going to take the L on this yet, because who knows? I had Nashville in, so I'm not taking the L yet. I don't necessarily think they're making it completely, but like they're still hanging in there in game 80 of the year, so I'm not that far off. Like it's not St. Louis that was eliminated a week ago.
Right. I think we're seeing teams shift pretty rapidly in the Eastern Conference right now. Like we've seen a lot of teams really load up at the trade deadline. We talked about, the Blues or the Rangers and the Bruins and the Lightning, and everyone's adding guys, and Toronto's adding guys. And in the West, all those guys kind of have to come from somewhere, and they came from the bad teams in the West. Things are moving a little slower out West, and the good teams are... I think the good teams are getting better and the bad teams are getting worse, but they're all still kind of in that mid clump.
So I want to read off my line for Seattle, because it's a whole lot of right things until the very last part.
Okay.
I said I'm possibly going Seattle first team out of the playoffs. They're going to be better than people think, a much more competitive team than people think. And I think a lot of it has to do with and stems from Matty Beniers,
future Calder Trophy winner,
and Shane Wright. So I was close.
1 out of 2 ain't bad.
Right, but I knew Beniers was going to make... Well, you know what I didn't have on my bingo card there? I didn't have Jared McCann 40-goal scorer.
I would be willing to bet a lot of people didn't.
Right. I didn't have that one, but Beniers being what he's been, and he was hurt for part of the year, no less, like... He's gonna be. He's got star potential. He's gonna be a good one for a long time. But yeah, that's really where I have it, and that's where I had it. By the way, I got one more. I got a quote from that episode from you that turned out to be very prophetic. I think, because you said, I also think there's a pretty good chance someone sneaks into the playoffs in the West with like 92 points. How many points? And Winnipeg is going to have 93 at the close of tonight. And be like right in that range. So you're pretty much spot on.
I feel pretty good about that. And the West is pretty wide open. And I think that's the good news I think that's going to translate into the playoffs as well. I'm looking at the Eastern Conference matchups, and as those matchups start to crystallize, I kind of start to form some opinions about them. But as I look at the Western Conference matchups, it's flipping a coin, it's rolling a dice, it's pretty wide open. And
so I don't know if I have it in the same document where I do the notes for the show completely, but I've written down, kind of tried to write down as it goes what the matchups are going to be.
Right.
And I'm telling you, I'm having fun looking at some of these for what they are. And let me see if I have I can look at the standings and do them as they are at this literally at the moment I'm saying them.
Right.
Results are changing. So if it ended today, like right now, disregard the results of tonight, of Monday night. Boston would play the Islanders. Carolina would play the Panthers. Devils, Rangers, Leafs. Well, Leafs Lightning is locked in, by the way.
Update on a game earlier in the show. Leafs Panthers is now tied. Brandon Montour tied that game. Panthers fighting.
But no, I'm not just saying this because I had him in fantasy all year. But what a year has Brandon Montour had? Like seriously, the guy who never put up, and I have to go back. I just want to check this to make sure I say the right numbers here. Guy whose career high in goals was 11 and career high in points was 37 is now at 16 goals and 73 points.
Hey,
what a year!
That.
Like
what
to be honest,
him in?
13.
Nice. It's a good value pickup right there.
Something ridiculous because he's ranked like 70th in the league or something like that. He's been outstanding all year. It's definitely one of those value picks. Would recommend 10 out of 10 that you get yourself a defenseman like that, But anyway, So that was the East matchups again. I know we updated the Florida score there. By the way, little footnote on the Florida push, by the way. Realize who's been in goal for all these games?
Alex Lyon,
Alex
taking the
Lyon.
world by storm. Had a game with 56 saves.
Stupid, just flat out stupid, but it was
he
great.
is putting up ridiculous numbers. You can tell this is a team that's used to playing behind Sergei Bobrovsky, or in front of Sergei Bobrovsky. They're just letting so many shots through. But he
couldn't happen
them all.
Couldn't happen to a better guy, by the way. Like, what a nice guy. He was always that kind of guy. And
a story that I guarantee I've told on this podcast before, but I don't care. We talked about Alex Lyon, so I'm going to mention it again.
Yes.
2018, I think it is. It's the Calder Cup playoffs. The Lehigh Valley Phantoms. Sorry,
is this the Charlotte game? Is that what it was? They played Charlotte.
No, they played the Toronto Marlies. I believe it was in the second. It was not the final.
Beyond then.
Right.
Conference final.
It was the conference final. I was there. I was in the front row. I was sitting basically right along the goal line on the ice. They were great seats, amazing seats.
Sure.
There's
great building too, by the way.
Oh yeah, it's a feisty game, and I'm right next to the tunnel. Like I'm literally right next to the tunnel where the Marlies walked out. It was a really cool seat.
Yeah.
There's a little feistiness in the game. You know, it is the AHL. It's the third period, and there's a player down on the ice in the crease, in Lyon's crease, like basically around his feet. And the play is, heading down the other end, and the player is, taking his time getting up because he's laying in the goalie's crease and is enjoying that. And my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, shouts, "Kick him!" And Alex Lyon nudges the guy with his pad. And then gets promptly kicked out of the game for kicking him.
That's great.
I believe the Phantoms were up 4 or 5-2 at the time. Like the game was about 6 minutes left. It was a pretty inconsequential removal, but he was kicked out of the game. Had the chance to ask him about it at the carnival the following year because he was up with the Flyers and attended the carnival, and he maintains that it was not a kick, and I agree. You shoved him with your pad. Might be a feel-good story from around the league over the last couple of weeks, honestly. Alex Lyon is playing his tail
has been
off.
A feel-good story. Okay.
Also, one of the best post-game interviews in history with the Phantoms. If you don't know it, just search Alex Lyon Mike Curse. It'll pop right up. If you know, you know.
Yeah, because isn't the catch from that after it was over, he says it and then goes like, "Oh wait, sorry."
Oh, he didn't say sorry, but he looked like he just kicked a puppy. He realized he was on TV and just
well, either way, the thing I for a second I thought you were gonna sit there and say because he's one of the best post game interviews I've ever.
Is.
In terms of. I still remember when he came back because he had played up with the Flyers for a few games, like maybe the year before or whatever, and he was back up and he finally won a game, and maybe it was like his third appearance or something. I don't remember completely, but talked for like 10 minutes after the game, which is like unheard of for players. Like
right.
Player post game is usually 2-3 minutes tops, and he just couldn't get enough of it and like was just soaking it all in. It's great. Actually, you know what? I believe I posted this at some point that I there was a picture that was taken of that scrum, and I'm like standing to his left.
That was a scrum wipers post?
No. Well, someone had a photo that made its way to Twitter,
okay.
and I just saved it, but I posted it again, like to repost, like from like, hey, I was down there doing stuff. So it was pre 2020. So really quick. So the Western Conference active matchups as we speak.
Yeah.
Would be. So Colorado would play Seattle, Dallas, Minnesota, Vegas, Winnipeg, Edmonton, LA.
Yeah, those are all.
Where do I sign up?
Those are all coin tosses, and they're fun matchups. Like I want to see Connor McDavid versus Phil Deneau for 4 to 7 games. That's a fascinating matchup.
You know what I really like about that? What it could set up because.
Yep. That's the thing about the divisional system is, everyone complains about it and you don't get the variety, the blah, 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 but you get guaranteed division games in the first round and pretty likely division games in the second round.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised based on if that order holds in some way, like at least the top 2, if that order holds, I would not be surprised if you got the top 2 to move on to play each other in the second round and then got a rematch of last year's conference final with Colorado Edmonton. I wouldn't
Oh
be
yeah.
shocked at all. But see, but here's the hard part. I wouldn't be shocked by that, but I wouldn't be shocked by some surprise team coming out of the thing either.
Well,
Because I think they're all good.
you don't have to lock in your decision now, but you will
I
have to
know
lock
it's
it
soon.
But you will have to lock it in on next week's show, and that is a great transition for us to get out of here.
Yep.
We will be back next week to do our playoff previews. We will have our full Stanley Cup winners predictions, do all the first round matchups, start talking about it as we go. Honestly, we didn't even talk about this off the show, but we will be moving to our every other week at some point here, our off-season schedule at some point here on the show. In the meantime, we'll be here this week. We'll be here next week. We'll talk about it beyond then. In the meantime, follow us on social media. Twitter's at YWT Podcast. Kevin's at Kevin_Durso. Find us everywhere you find your podcast: Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SportsTalkPhilly.com, YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button. Really helps us out. Share it with your friends. Other than that, man, I'm just getting excited. We're about a week away from the playoffs. We're doing this on Monday night. Playoffs start 1 week from today.
Yeah, good hockey to come for sure.
All
you know,
right.
like it's just gonna be great to see, and I'm ready for it. I'm so ready for it. Got a couple more formal things to do on the Flyer side of things first, and then all focus shifts to the playoffs, and I can't wait to do it. I'm kind of curious how I'm gonna go about doing it. If I'm just gonna sit there and tweet a lot about it, or whatever, but we'll see. I can't wait for our show. I can't wait for our shows during it, though, for sure.
Absolutely, and we'll be back next week to talk about it. So until then, one more week into the playoffs. We'll see ya.